Let's see if that works. If it does, that'd be great. But yeah, guys, if you have any baseball related questions, or if you have any comments or questions, anything about baseball, that is quite literally why I'm here. Okay, we are live on YouTube right now, which is awesome. Cool, guys. Love your teaching talk. Yeah, so 11 a.m. The reason that I do this at 11 a.m. Is mostly for the the parents, right? So even though you're a player, maybe looking for some guidance, right? I want to do this to be able to talk to the parents, especially because sometimes the parents are the reason why there's a lot of setbacks in the development of young players like yourself, right? But no, getting back to it, if you're changing teams or anything like that, it's not just about playing time. It's not just about if you're like sitting or what position you're playing. Like these things, in my opinion, aren't the most important things. I think creating the dynamic of just like hopping to another team whenever you're not happy. Happy is a state of mind, guys, and I can't even inside my academy, I can't promise all you guys are going to be happy in this world. That's kind of unreasonable to really say. If you're happy at on a team, you might not even be playing the game. You might be sitting. You could be happy sitting because the teammates are that great, right? They could be awesome. But the thing is, like, happiness isn't a byproduct of playing time. I used to play every single day, even in pro ball, and when I was starting every single day, sometimes I was the leadoff hitter, I was the starting shortstop, and I was in AAA. Like, I wasn't the happiest I've ever been, right? So don't expect to be happy on a team. Understand the bigger principles of development. If you have the opportunities to develop, that is a good opportunity to grow and to hopefully leapfrog above some of those other players, right? We really want to think about that because a lot of people don't think about those things. I want you to understand the dynamic when I went to NC State. When I went to NC State, I was not a good baseball player. Like I was not good enough to be able to really truly start. And I didn't hop to another team like I think a lot of people typically do. I don't like that dynamic of you can just move to another team whenever. I don't vibe with that. I vibe with more of like a understanding of where you currently stand and making sure that you have the ability to develop and grow, because those are the things that I think are way more important than just hopping to another team. So having that mindset of like maybe sticking it out another 2 or 3 or 4 months, because that could be the opportunity for you to grow into the player that you needed to become. But a lot of people don't necessarily think that way. Some people, they just simply don't think that way. So, unfortunately. Okay. All right. If you have any baseball related questions, though, guys, feel free to ask. I'm gonna hit up some questions from social media. What does a late bloomer really mean for college baseball recruiting? So let's talk about late bloomers. I think this one will hit home to a lot of parents, especially because a lot of parents probably have players that are like 5'6", 110 pounds in their sophomore year. If that hit the nail on the head for some of you guys, listen up. So the reason I think late bloomers are okay and actually sometimes slept on is because like I was a little bit of a late bloomer, especially for my power numbers, hitting, right? For me, hitting, like power numbers are going to be the things that come last in the development of players, right? So if you really think about it, being 5'6", yep, that's the thing that we can't really necessarily control. This is an area that we somewhat can control. Of course, our grade as far as the timeline and things like that, we'll want to be ahead of the curve. But really the thing that we want to think about is it's okay to be a late bloomer because that power is to be expected. That is the last tool that will be developed. But we really want to make sure that we have understanding of functional movements. Because if we have these functional movements as far as like rotation and the ability to understand basically how to rotate, these are going to be the things that matter way more. Because your son's 5'6", 110 pounds as a sophomore. He's undersized. He's a late bloomer. Okay, well, 5'8", 150 pounds as a 28-year-old. Not too far off, right? Not too far off as far as the height, 2 inches right there. As far as the weight, yes, 40 pounds, because a grown man is going to be a little bit more dense and has a little bit more muscle mass. So these are the things that I think are really important. But like, think about this. That's an Altuve, like a Marcus Stroman, right? Like these guys aren't super tall. They're not super big, they're not built, but they understand these functional movements on how to rotate. And I think that's an area that a lot of high school baseball players just completely lack, is not having that understanding of their functional movements as far as their rotational strength. So are most Power Fives done recruiting 2027 and more open on mid-majors? It seems most of the top 300 kids are committed. So I never want to say like schools are done with a specific recruiting class. Like you might hear that from one university or another. I think it's better to always have the understanding that there will be a potential door open if the skills match up with what that university actually looks like. If they're a Power Five, like yes, they're gonna have a lot more of a pool, right? Like I used yesterday as far as an example for social media, like you don't wanna be posting inside of a pool that only has a couple of people. College programs are gonna view it the same thing. They're not gonna look at guys in this small pool. They're gonna try looking at a guy or a bunch of guys into this bigger pool, right? Because there's more competition, there's more opportunity, and these players are becoming more sophisticated in the whole college recruiting process, NIL opportunities. So there's so much more talent over here than right here. So why are they going to look or maybe limit themselves to maybe one graduation class when they can be looking at the transfer portal, right? They could be looking at high school 2026s, they could look at high school 2027s. And that's where like this circle might be alive in this circle, but it's just that big, right? So I'm not going to say that all Power Five, and I'm not here to also put blanket statements out there that all Power Fives are done recruiting 2027s, because maybe there's that little bit of schools that are still interested in maybe a catcher who's a 2027, right? These are the things that the way that recruiting really works, and I think a lot of people don't really understand this, is school one might be looking at 2027s, right? School two, that's supposed to be 27s. School two might be like, no, we don't need any 2027s. We already did a really good job staying ahead of the curve. We basically already did our homework way early, and because we did our homework way early, we don't need any 27s. We're done with those guys. We already have a draft or a graduation class of like 28 guys, right? If we have 28 guys, incoming 28 guys, and we only have maybe like 4 or 5 that are going to get drafted or that are seniors about to get graduated, it's like, okay, well, there's going to be an influx and not everyone's going to make the team. And that's something that, I wish everyone knew. If you land a scholarship to a specific team, you do not earn the rights to start playing right off the gate. You don't earn the rights you have to perform when you get there. You have to perform in fall ball. You have to perform in preseason. And if you're not performing, you're probably not going to travel, and you're probably not going to be playing competitive baseball at that university. They will only take the cream of the crop, and if you're not the cream of the crop and you're basically just relaxed and you're not competing and you're not getting the job done as far as your performance, like they will move on to someone that is performing, because these college coaches, it's their job, and winning is something that they need to have. And if they don't have this winning, guess what they don't have? A job, right? So we need to think about this at a higher level. This is not daddy ball anymore. This is not high school ball. This is not travel ball. This is people's livelihoods, salaries on the table. And guess what? This is when parents are out of the equation. This is where the player needs to put in the work, show the consistency as far as the hard work that they're putting in on their own, not just in the team practices, because newsflash, if you're at a Power 5, you're going to be working out a ton. You're going to be doing a lot of skill work. You're going to be doing a lot of tutoring, a lot of, homework. You're going to have all the excuses in the world why you can't get that extra work in. But I can promise you, if you find that time to get that extra work in, maybe at midnight to do extra swings, and college coaches or your college coaches find out that you're putting in that extra work consistently, day after day, week after week, month after month, that's when they're going to start trusting you more and more. I was talking about a little bit more of the scenario you're already at that university, but hopefully that answers your question. I believe that we had a question over on YouTube by Kevin. I used to be a 10th grader, 110-pound, 8th grader, grade year. It gained 30 pounds after lifting. That's awesome, man. So you went from like 110 to 140-ish between 8th grade to 9th grade. That's awesome, dude. And obviously lifting can be a byproduct, gaining that weight can be a byproduct of lifting, which is huge. Obviously putting in that work is going to, amount to gaining that muscle, gaining that weight. In baseball, there's just the fun phrase of like mass equals gas, especially for pitchers. So always keep that in mind. Like there are opportunities to develop yourself even more, and of course by putting yourself out there and making sure that you have the resources to grow. These are things that are really, really important. But yeah, feel free to ask any other questions that you guys have. I'm gonna hit a backlog of some questions though. Let's see. Ooh, what's something parents focus on that actually backfires? Okay, let's get into it, guys. So parent mistakes, basically. So the biggest one is probably emailing these college coaches on behalf of your player. That's a huge area that will backfire, because ideally these college coaches want to hear from the individual player, not the parents. The parents are not the one being recruited. The player is the one being recruited. So that's where they want to start developing a relationship with the player. If I had to use this as an example in the dating world, if I'm to date someone, I'm not dating the mom of the girl, right? Like I'm dating the girl, right? I don't want to have the mom or the dad in the equation too much. Like, yes, it's healthy to have a relationship with them, but if it's too involved with the mom or the dad, like, it's just going to be weird. It's going to be like, am I dating the girl that I like, or am I dating the parents of the girl that I like, right? So when we're thinking about dating, and college recruiting is very similar to dating, because yes, it's important for you to find someone that you like, but also it's equally as important that they find someone that they like, right? And that's where you guys mesh in the middle. But I see it all the time, especially with the lower level D3s, D2s, even NAIA and sometimes JUCOs, that they want a player just to be able to fill a roster spot. They offer your son, and then because your son doesn't know any better or doesn't see his true value, he'll just take that opportunity and run with it. When in reality, again, this is going to backfire because parents are too involved. Another thing is, again, not on the same topic of parents being too involved, basically being too involved with conversations and stuff like that with the college coach beyond that, right? So like I will say, even not necessarily at the college level, but even at the high school level, if you're too involved with the high school coaches, you have to always talk to them after the game. You always have to ask them what decisions they made as far as playing their son. Oh, why'd you bunt in the 6th inning when you guys were down a run with a runner on second with your best hitter up? Like, why would you even do that? Like if you're always asking and bothering these high school coaches, you better bet that if your son is on the cusp of earning a scholarship, these college coaches will ask high school coaches. They'll call them up and say, hey, how's this kid? If the first thing that your high school coach is like, be careful of their parents, man. They're not super fun. Ooh, that doesn't sound fun, right? So like, don't put your son in that situation where that's something that the high school coach could say, right? And typically speaking, that doesn't apply to 99% of most parents, but that 1% of parents that like take it upon themselves to let the competition get to them, it seems like every time that their son gets out or strikes out or doesn't play or is forced to bunt by the coach, like their blood boils. Like those are the types of parents that I think will get frustrated too easily, and then of course those frustrations will carry over to the high school coach, and of course the high school coach will tell the college coach. So hopefully that gives you guys some insights on that. Any questions though whatsoever, guys? My name is Evan Mendoza. I played 7 years of professional baseball between the St. Louis Cardinals and San Diego Padres. Played D1 baseball at NC State University, and I'm here to give all that knowledge with you guys. So if you have any baseball related questions, feel free to drop them down below in the chat. Let's talk about, is private training actually necessary, or is it just like marketing and stuff like that? So let's really talk about just like private lessons, because this is something that I want to talk about, because the last time that I did any type of private lesson was in 7th grade. I did not buy the environment of private lessons where it's person 1 and person 2. And basically, I'm person 2, I'm trying to learn from person 1, and I need to have person 1 by my side to get working. I need that number 1 coach to be next to me, to be in the same room as me, to be able to hit. Now, in my opinion, that environment is so outdated, and the highest caliber players do not need anybody to get work in. You have that mindset of being able to get that extra work in, whether or not there's a single person in a 100-mile radius from you. If you're in the middle of a farm and you have acres on acres on acres and you don't see a living creature in sight, but you have a baseball in your hand, throw it as far as you can and then go pick it up. Throw it as far as you can again and then pick it up. Maybe you're lucky to have 2 baseballs. Throw both baseballs and then go pick it up, right? We want to be resourceful with the opportunities that are available to us. And newsflash, if you have a wall and if you have a ball, play wall ball. It's that simple, guys. So like, don't put, and this is my personal opinion, it might not necessarily be the most accurate. And yes, private lessons work for some people. I don't think it worked for me beyond middle school because I was a little bit more advanced mentally, that I didn't need that person holding my hand across the street. I was grown enough to know that 1 hour a week is not going to move the needle as much as my individual 4 hours a day. If I put in 4 hours a day of hitting or training or wall ball or throwing or weightlifting or sprint work or just hitting off the tee, that is going to move the needle. Again, 4 hours a day versus 1 hour a week. Which one do you think really is going to move the needle? And I'm asking everyone that's in the chat right now, which one do you think really is going to move the needle more? 4 or 1? Let me know down below in the chat, because this is something that I think is obvious, but not everyone sees it so differently. If we cover it versus a month, right? So that's like, even let's do this, 1 hour a week, or that's 4 times 7, that's 28 hours a week. If we do that, that's 112 hours a month versus 4 hours a month. Like, do we not see that so obviously that 1 hour a week is not going to get it done versus 112 hours a month? And guys, by all means, 4 hours a day is not a ridiculous amount of time to work. 4 hours can include obviously your team practices or games or things like that. But let's say like your team practice is only 3 hours. How do we get that extra 1 hour? You go home, you do a sprinting program, you play some more wall ball, you get those additional fields, you hit off the tee, you keep yourself busy and away from your phone. These are the areas that I think a lot of high school baseball players need some help on to be able to understand. Even one of my first ever lives here, a student asked me how to get extra work in. Right behind me, there's some floor space. More than likely, your son has a room or there's a floor inside your house. Push-ups, sit-ups. If you're lucky enough, you can buy one of those wall mount things for pull-ups, right? Making sure that we see the resources that are available to us, because a lot of high school baseball players don't see the resources because they don't know what to look for. They don't understand how to be, in a weird way, creative enough to understand really truly how to be, that resourceful and creative. Let's play a game. Let's play some wall ball. I need to field 10 ground balls barehanded with a racquetball without any bobbling before I move on to doing 10 push-ups. And every time I get 10 in a row, I do 10 push-ups, and I do that for 10 sets, right? So that way I'm practicing myself to stay consistent for 10 reps. I do 10 push-ups, get a little bit of like a physical build in or movement in, and then we go right back into having soft hands. And if I get to 9 and I bobble it on 10, then we reset to 0. Like, having these fun games, that's part of being a kid. That's part of being, competitive. I want you guys to think like that rather than, hey, I'm going to go hit with this coach for an hour and he's going to tell me good job for half of my swings. It's like, okay, well, who has the focus on getting better, right? Is it, hey, I'm just going to let this number, this trainer guy just tell me what to do, and I'm just going to basically close my eyes and just do whatever he says, boom, boom. No, I think it's more important that your son starts to develop these understandings on what resources are available to me, how can I implement them into my development at the end of the day. So if that's something that you guys are interested in learning a little bit more about, like I said, guys, my name is Evan Mendoza. I played 7 years of pro ball. If you are interested in working one-on-one with me inside my mentorship program, this is not like PDFs or YouTube videos or anything like that. This is a one-on-one mentorship with myself. You can click the link in the bio to learn a little bit more about my triple play program, where we focus on the physical development, the mental, and the recruiting guidance, because I think a lot of high school baseball players and really the parents are having a hard time in the recruiting process because there's, again, so much noise. And it's frustrating because it's like, okay, well, what do I do now? Like, what do I focus on? And sometimes it can get blurry. And I'm going to try drawing something because I think it could be important to understand. So, like, this is the goal, and this is where you're here. Okay? I'm going to try this out. I don't know if it works. This is going to require some, let's see. Okay, and then I think there's a way to do like a filter. Yeah, okay. How do we do this? There's a way to do this, and I want you guys to kind of like visualize this with me. Oh gosh, I'm blurry. Sometimes, there we go. Sometimes recruiting kind of looks like this, right? You're in LA? No, I'm not. Are you in LA? No, I'm not. I'm in North Carolina. I grew up a lot in Florida. But yeah, my academy is 100% remote. We work with students all across the U.S. We even have 2 students in Japan, 2 in Canada, and 2 in Mexico, which is pretty exciting. We also, about 2 months ago, got our first student in Hawaii, which is really, really cool as well. But no, what I was about to say, guys, is in the recruiting game, sometimes it feels like you're here and you're trying to get over here. And you can kind of see like the path in some regards, but you can't really see exactly where to go, right? And the easiest path is just right there, right? But it looks like you should go here. Some people are telling you to go this way. Some people are telling you to go that way. Some people are telling you to go this way. Some people are telling you to go that way. Well, we all know the most efficient path from A to B is a direct straight line, right? I think we all know that. Geometry is what taught me that in 9th grade. But some people in recruiting will go down here, go down up here, up here. And this is just taking more time to, again, get to the same destination. Wouldn't you like the opportunity to be able to go from here to here? Not make those mistakes here, not make those mistakes here, not make those mistakes here. That one was a small mistake, but still is a mistake nonetheless. And then basically all these mistakes are wasted time, wasted effort. So if that resonates with you, if you're a parent of a high school baseball player, click the link in my bio, learn a little bit more about my triple play. I think this is the area that I think a lot of parents are especially feeling in today's age of the recruiting process. You can always schedule an eligibility review. That is the next step for anyone that is serious to be able to get the resources to get help. I only work with really high school baseball players, 8th grade and up. Very dedicated 8th graders. I typically don't do a lot of 8th graders, but most of my students, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, sometimes we're making that final push for those seniors. And that way we can better understand where your son's at, where he's trying to go, and if we can even help. There are some players that we've turned down because we don't feel like we can help. So if we ever make you guys an offer to actually work together, that's something that, don't take that lightly. Like we want to make sure it's a good fit, make sure that you guys are showing the responsibility to do the homework before we actually speak on that eligibility review. But yeah, a lot of parents will tell us like that eligibility review, it's a Zoom call with both parents if they're in the picture, and then also the player as well. Some people will like tell us thank you, just thank you for giving us this clarity. Sometimes they don't join us to the program, that's totally fine, but like they just say thank you at the end of our calls because they didn't realize where they never zoomed out, right? They never zoomed out and be like, oh, I didn't see it like that before. Like, and technically speaking, that is recruiting right here. Like, it's a small area of the overall development of your son, right? So when we keep that in mind, or if you keep that in mind, you're going to be in a pretty good position moving forward. But let's keep going. Day 8 of 50, streaming every single day at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, excluding Sundays, just because I'm going to be at church. And also this Sunday, it might be a little bit snowy here in North Carolina. We'll see about this winter storm. Everyone hopefully is going to be able to stay safe. I think they already started salting the roads. So Okay, cool. Let's see another question. How do we know if our son is being over or under recruited? I don't really understand that question, honestly. Um, oh, sorry. How do we know if our son is being under recruited or properly? So you'll typically be able to see that in the recruiting game as far as the level of recruiting based off of the responses and really the clicks that you're getting inside your emails. And if you're not tracking, opens, clicks, and responses, like, what are we doing, right? That's like basically not tracking your batting average percentage, your ERA. Like, if you don't know your son's weight or height or age, right? Like, why even track his age, right? Does it even matter nowadays? Well, yes, it does. So as far as should you be tracking email open, click, and response rate, I'll give you a hint, guys. Yes, you should, right? Because based off of what we track is what gets measured, and what gets measured gets improved. And if you are like me and you believe in that philosophy, you want to make sure that you're putting in that work every single day to know the data behind your decisions, right? If we never collect the data, and by the way, guys, this is way different than the data of recruiting services, right? That data is just giving you the basic data, name, email, phone number, things like that. And like, yes, that can be helpful, but when the emails are already free online, there's no need to like spend thousands and thousands of emails. Yeah, more than likely high school baseball players are not tracking opens, clicks, and response rate because that's pretty high level stuff. But think about like if you send, and I always like to use radical extremes to be able to prove points, right? Let's say we sent 100 emails, 100 that have been sent. Now through our tracking software, one thing that's I think really important as well is, let's just say for my email address, it's Gmail, but instead of gmail.com, accidentally I typed in gmail.com instead of gmail.com. Well, if I did that, what's going to happen inside of our tracking software, immediately, it's going to say for each school, it's going to say email bounced because it bounced. That's not a real email address. It's Gmail, not Gmail, right? It's going to say the same thing here and so forth. So let's say we send 100 and 99 bounce. Is your son good? Did these college coaches even get a chance to evaluate him? Why haven't you gotten responses? Are they clicking on his highlight video? We just sent these emails and heard nothing back. These college coaches probably just don't like my son. All of those things are not true. The reason is because one school out of the 100 that you sent had the opportunity to actually evaluate your son. And maybe that one school was like, maybe not at the right time. But 99 of them bounced, and you never knew that because you're never tracking basically what's going on with these emails, right? If you made a typo, and that's just a radical extreme. Now, on the other side, let's go green. Now over here, because green's the color that actually tracks in our tracking software, it'll say email open, clicked, response. Let's say we send 100 and 100 get opened. But 0 get clicked on. That's going to be an indicator that your son's probably, as far as the metrics that we provided inside the email, probably not the best, right? Maybe your son is throwing 25 miles an hour, his exit velocity is 4 miles an hour, and his 60-yard dash time is 1.2 days, okay? So maybe based off of those metrics, he's probably not going to fit an LSU mold, right? So we have to think about, okay, what is this telling us? If 100 of them actually had the opportunity to open up our emails, but nobody clicked on our highlight video, well, probably because I saw my 60 time, or your son's 60 time being 1.2 days, and was like, I don't even need to open up this highlight video. This guy does not fit our mold whatsoever. So again, these are all basic understandings of how our emails are performing. The same way that your son When he steps up to the plate, your coaches have a general understanding of how your son has performed previously, right? So if your son is hitting 800, he's been performing pretty successfully. If he's hitting a buck 50, he hasn't been hitting super great. He's been striking out a lot. He's been rolling over a ton. Batting average is a metric that is tracked. Why are we not tracking our email performance, especially in the college recruiting game, when only 7% of all high school baseball players will play college baseball at any level, and less than 2% will play on at the college level, at the D1 level, I should say. Even less than that, maybe like 0.5% will actually start at a D1 university. Because just because you land a scholarship to a D1 university does not mean that you're going to start. So keep that in mind, guys. Like, what gets measured gets improved. And that's the exact reason that we have this tracking system that's called the College Commitment Blueprint. It's inside my Mendoza Baseball Academy. Click the link in my bio if you're learning or want to learn a little bit more about how this whole thing operates, especially if your son is in high school. We do work with freshmen to send out emails because it is important to send out emails even in freshman year. Yes, these college coaches cannot really offer you until junior year, but they have a thing called a pipeline. And so do I. Like, I have students that are in 5th grade that have expressed that they want to work with me, and I'm like, not now, buddy, right? Or a parent, hey, my son's in 2nd grade, he wants to work with you. Not now, parent, right? Because I can't work with you. I work with high school baseball players. I work with sometimes very dedicated 8th graders that understand it's going to be a little bit more of a long-term approach, but I work with high schoolers, guys. So freshmen, we do send out emails. Sophomores, we do send out emails, and I think it's actually the best time to start. There's no such thing as best time, but really the best time to get this thing processed if you are a high school baseball player, or if you're a parent of a high school baseball player. I would say anytime that he is a high school baseball player, I think it's an important time to send out emails so that way we can get this ball rolling. The most important thing I will say, by speaking with hundreds of families every single month on eligibility reviews, is really the inaction comes from the misunderstanding of how to even email a college coach. You don't know how to email a college coach. And sometimes it sounds dumb, but you don't know how to click send. Because it's not like an overly complicated thing. Like, you just send an email, right? The area where, like what I'm talking about right here as far as tracking things, that is an area for the more advanced recruiter, right? The one, not necessarily recruiter, but the one that wants to get recruited. Maybe you're a junior and you're okay with going D3. Yeah, just send the emails however you want to send them, dude. Like, just do that. That's fine. You don't need the advanced strategies. But again, the advanced strategies are for those that are trying to elevate those scholarships to a D2 scholarship rather than D3 just walk-on type of thing, because D3 doesn't really do scholarships like D2 or D1. Maybe you're like a D2 caliber type talent and you want that D1 talent. That's where something like this comes into play. This isn't for like the baseball player that kind of just plays baseball just for the fun of it, guys. This is to advance strategies. Like, if you've ever gone to, like, your settings on your phone, let's just use it right here because I have it. It's gonna be easy. I go to actions right here. You can see my screen, right? So I go to actions. I can go to preferences. Okay, pretty cool. This is like the basic stuff that most players can do as far as, let's just talk about emailing college coaches, right? Think about that, right? We're putting on some, the subject line, the body of the email. See how it says advanced cursor settings, whatever that even means, right? So, like, these are the advanced settings if we're talking about college recruiting. If we're wanting to track open rate, click rate, response rate, this is where my system comes into play as far as a very simple, easy to use system. And then once that system is built out, guys, you own it for the rest of your life. You'll be able to use this for outreach, maybe even for the parents' outreach. Maybe you guys, send a bulk number of emails and they're typically the same, but you want to personalize using input fields. You'll be able to use this system as well because it's very, very efficient. I've used it for getting brand deals for NIL opportunities, basically when I used to play Pro Bowl. And it's just very effective to understand who's opening what. Sandman Liner. So my son was at a D school. He did the tryouts and he was in shock that he did not make the team, but I did witness that he was one of the ones standing out and other players were missing a lot. I don't know what that means. Well, not well-rounded players. So that's like your subjective opinion, and especially since you're, a parent of, your son, you're going to expect your son to be the best whatsoever. But there might have been certain areas of that tryout that the coaches saw. Maybe it was his 60 time. If he ran a 60, that just didn't necessarily stack up with what they are looking for his specific position. So, like, for example, he might be a 6.4 second 60 as a catcher, right? Like, I don't know a lot about your son. Of course, feel free to give me more information so it's more contextual to you. That's the reason why I do these lives, so that way it can be as specific to your specific situation or your son's specific situation. But let's say he was running a 6.4 second 60 as a catcher. Catchers don't need to run a 6.4 second 60. It's a great like addition to his tool set, but let's say his pop time is 3 seconds. Like, that's more of an important metric for your son, but maybe like this is an area where he stands out in his 60, but it's not necessarily the most useful thing as far as a catcher where that's his tool set. And maybe he's a catcher that can't play first base. He doesn't have the ability to field ground balls. I'm making up a bunch of scenarios to basically understand that college coaches, especially at the tryout level, and especially if he was just trying to like walk on as a D2 baseball player without a scholarship, like this is where, and I saw it happen. It was actually really interesting. I didn't know what walk-on really meant, especially at the D1 level. So let's talk about D1 walk-ons real quick. So we would have, let's just say like 36 guys under some level of a scholarship, right? 36 players. We might have had like 2 that, it was really cool. And I don't know how it is at every single university. Some universities, especially at the D1 level or at the D2 level, they might have tryouts where anyone's welcome. But we had 2 guys that walked on, and it was actually pretty cool because we had one of them actually like get a decent amount of playing time. He was a pitcher and would throw like 97 miles an hour, right? He's a right-handed pitcher, and he actually got drafted by the Orioles and threw 97 miles an hour, right? So he had the tools, and this was like a preferred walk-on where they had communication beforehand. They said, hey, we really like you. We're not able to offer you a scholarship, but you can definitely practice with the team. And if you're good enough, you'll be able to make the team, and you'll be able to travel with the team. So this is the area where, if you think about how many players might have had a scholarship at that tryout with your son, maybe they just didn't have a spot, logistically speaking, for a walk-on to come on. But again, these are all the unknowns of like not necessarily knowing what's going on. So let's see. And I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I'm straight out. If he sucks, he sucks. Yeah. And I believe you. I also believe the college coach for, you know, their expertise of understanding the game of baseball as well. And there's, you know, sometimes the logistical aspect. Sometimes there's the practical side where, again, if he's a catcher, for example, and runs a 6'2", like that's great. He's super fast, but he's not super versatile, and there's really not a spot considering all outfield positions already been taken by upperclassmen. Can't field ground balls at first base. Like, where else is he going to be able to play? Maybe there's just not the practical side of if there's a spot for him. So that's where, like, if, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like Sandman Liner, did he try to like walk on at that tryout? Because that's going to change the dynamic. Look, like, we had a walk-on throwing 97 miles an hour as a right-handed pitcher, and he got like 12 innings of pitching throughout the entire season. That's not a lot for a pitcher, by the way. He was throwing 97 miles an hour. Yes, he had control issues, but like, he had the tools without a doubt. Everyone knew he threw extremely hard, but he didn't play a lot. Mostly because there were other scholarship players that were in front of him that took up more innings. And the 12 innings that he did pitch is usually when we had a huge lead on like a Sunday, or we were losing by a lot, which really wasn't very often, right? So let's say your son does make the team. Is this going to be a similar situation where he is the most talented player, but he's not getting the playing time? So now what does that turn into for your son? Does that turn into a pretty frustrating situation? Yes, he was invited to so I don't know what invited means. I don't know what I don't know what invited means. If he has a scholarship, he has a scholarship. If I read your first question, so my son was at a D2 school. He did the tryouts, then he was shocked that he didn't make the team. So if he just went as like, there's no other way to say it, but like we would always make fun, but NARPs. So NARPs are non-athletic, regular people. So if your son was just like a NARP and he tried to walk on, okay, so like he did try to walk on as kind of like a NARP, right? That's just what we talked about as far as like normal students at the university. So like in a way, your son was a non-student athlete, right? Like he came into the university not going through admissions, through the backing of the scholarship money that he was getting, or through the athletic department. Because like, for example, for me, I did aerospace engineering, so I did engineering. Okay, I didn't know if I was like good enough academically to get pushed into the engineering program. So I did the typical like application, right, to get admitted, right? But I also had the athletic department push in my favor to get admitted as well, right? So like this is the area that like will help you get places in college baseball, right? So if he was just a walk-on, he again had to be in one of those really unique situations where he's throwing 97 miles an hour and he might not necessarily even get the playing time that you feel like he deserves. It's again because of the preface of he's a walk-on rather than he has scholarship money behind him. Like it's going to be almost I don't want to say impossible, but that's where it gets frustrating that something wasn't done sooner, right? Because if he is a good quality baseball player, but he just chose to go to a D2, thinking that he was going to try out and make every single team that he tries out for, that's where sometimes the belief of how college athletics works can get misconstrued. If like his senior year, he was a really solid player, and he had an opportunity to maybe go to a lower level D2 school or maybe a higher end D3 school, and that communication was done before getting admitted to the university, that's where he's going to have those better opportunities. But now you're kind of living in like this stage of why didn't he make the team? He's good enough. When there were some guys that tried to do the walk-on thing, there's another pitcher that was throwing mid-90s that had 0 innings. He didn't make the team. The guy that was throwing 97 was the one guy that made the team, and he got very limited playing time because, again, the dynamic of he was a walk-on. There were other scholarship guys getting that playing time that he technically was taking up from them, right? So this is where like college coaches will make decisions, right? And when they make those decisions, they kind of live and die by them. They're like, okay, these are my decisions, and I'm not just going to write them down. I'm going to circle them, and these are my decisions, and I'm going to also square them because like these are my decisions. I'm not going to back out from them. And then very, very rarely they're like, maybe we should have let this guy in. We'll let this guy in over here. But we're not going to circle him. We're not going to square him or anything like that. We're just going to give him like 12 innings pitched, even though he throws 97 miles an hour and played AAA baseball later on in his professional career. I played against him, and he throws absolute fuzz. So, yeah, he had like 12. And by the way, forgot to mention, like these 12 innings, that was over the course of his 3 years at NC State. Like he did not pitch really at all his freshman year, his sophomore year, a little bit his junior year, and that little bit of his junior year was enough for pro scouts to be like, ooh, this guy throws fuzz. I think we can get him drafted, right? And he did get drafted. Well, after that, I told him to get off that cloud and start his career back into the real world. All right, let's get a couple more questions in. Anybody that's joining in, if you guys have any baseball-related questions, feel free to ask. This is a pretty in line, so let's hit this question. So, is it better to chase D1 or find the right fit at any level? So, in my opinion, I was okay to suffer 1 year in the regards of developing my skills to be able to excel and grow my game, right? So, what I mean by suffer is like, I went to a school that stacked the odds, right? So like if this is the odds, I want to stack those odds in my favor. Again, like if we're using one of those weight things, what is it called? A scale, I guess. This is my drawing of a scale thing. We want to, my odds, right? 2Ds. These are my odds over here, right? I want to stack them in my favor, right? Because I wanted to go to school for my engineering for a backup plan, right? I wanted to go to a school where freshmen played pretty often. I wanted to go to a school where they allowed me to be a two-way player. I wanted to go to a school where they had the facilities to develop my growth, whether or not it was during a team practice. So I wanted to make sure they had facilities that I had like a fob access, so that way I could go into that specific batting cage and get my work in. So I wanted to add as many odds over here on my favor, and the most important one is like, do freshmen play? Yes, freshmen play. I had opportunities my freshman year to actually be a pitcher, and I kind of just didn't perform well, right? Now, my sophomore year, that was when I was a right-handed pitcher. My sophomore year, I was a third baseman, and I made that transition because they allowed me to be a two-way player, and that's something that a lot of universities didn't really necessarily have that ability to give players second chances, right? And then junior year is when I got basically drafted, right? So these are the steps that you have to sometimes take, knowing that we want to have these odds in my favor. So as far as to get back into the question, should we chase D1 or settle for a place that you're going to play? Guys, there is no guarantee in the world that your son will actually play at that lower end D2. There's no guarantee that he's going to play at that lower end D3. There's no guarantee that he's going to play at that higher end D1. So these are like scenarios that I think a lot of parents like to like bring up, especially in the recruiting process, because you guys think it's very, black and white, right? You think it's very, very like, this side of the equation is D1, no play. This is how I imagine parents kind of thinking in their mind. This area over here is D2, and my son's going to play. Right? Like, no, that's not the way that the world works. That's not how baseball works. Never, and it will never be that way. Guys, you have to have that understanding that, like, you could be at this D1 and play because your son's putting in the work. He's actually a really solid baseball player. And freshmen do play at specific universities because they're actually good and they contribute to games to win games, right? So don't get into this mindset where it's black and white, where one scenario he's going to play at the D1, or he's not going to play at the D1. And if he goes to D3, he is for sure going to play every single game. It's like, no, the best players are going to play. That's what it comes down to. The best players will play, and it's up to your son to be one of those best players. It's not up to anyone else. It's up to your son to be one of those best players, to develop his skills, to showcase to these college coaches that they can trust him. That's a big one that I think a lot of people don't really even talk about. You want to make sure that these college coaches can trust your son. This is Coffee and Baseball, guys. By the way, got my coffee down here. But yeah, hopefully that makes sense, guys. I really want to make sure that I'm giving you guys as much valuable, like, just advice as possible, specific to your guys' situation. That's what I do these lives for. I don't want to do these lives because of this or because of that. Like, I want to be able to implement specific strategies for you guys live together when you're engaged and you're active in conversation with me. And that can only happen really in this type of dynamic. Like, I always like to kind of put the difference of if I post like 3-second videos, like some of those videos, yeah, they get 100,000 views, super cool. But some of those videos also like just brain rot you. They in a way, like they're out there, you see it, you scroll, and this is kind of like a little bit of an example. A lot of you guys are on Instagram right now, but like, how many of you guys can actually remember how many reels or TikToks or short form videos on a horizontal or a vertical, how many can you guys remember that you actually saw yesterday? Like, do you remember a specific reel that you saw yesterday? Like, can you actually remember that reel? Because personally, like last night, my fiance and I, we were like just scrolling on our phone on the couch. She came back from a work trip and we were scrolling for like 20 minutes together. And it's something that we like typically don't really do. Sometimes before bed, she'll send me like reels that she thinks is funny. We'll look them over. But like, I can't really remember a single one that we watched last night. I can't remember really a single one. Because all these reels are designed to do is just keep you swiping to the next one, swipe to the next one, swipe to the next one. So a lot of this short form content, guys, like I don't think it's benefiting you guys at all in the college recruiting process, which is exactly why I'm doing these, lives, so that way you can come in, ask your specific question, learn something, engage, and hopefully implement right after we are done talking. Now the implementation side of things, that is the hardest area to do by yourself without a doubt. Let's get to Redbeard, because Redbeard's an OG. I think he was on day 1 of these lives. Guys, by the way, doing lives every single day for 50 straight days, streaming at 11 a.m. Eastern, excluding Sundays. This is going to be the last question before we hop off, so make sure to tell a friend to tell a friend, because that's the only way that this thing grows. Heard multiple people say most freshmen go to D2 now and transfer later. With the transfer portal changing the landscape of things, not a lot of openings as a freshman in D1. Thoughts on that? I think if your name is Bryce Harper, you're probably going to play at a D1 program, right? Because Bryce Harper is a good baseball product, right? He started taking the game very serious at a very young age. So like he's probably going to play at a D1 and play, right? Because the skills match up with winning games, right? Like if Bryce Harper's skills are hitting home runs, stealing bags, throwing the ball 90 off the mound like he did at the JUCO level. By the way, he went JUCO so he'd get drafted that much quicker, and that way he could elevate up to the big leagues that much sooner. But if you really think about it, guys, if the skill matches the level that you're competing at, there's no reason why these D1 coaches wouldn't want an incoming freshman, or basically a true freshman if we're talking football and basketball terms. There's no reason that a D1 program wouldn't want a Bryce Harper, because his skills will project out to be a very solid baseball player. So a Bryce Harper's not going to go to D2 in today's landscape because just more people are getting pushed down. Like Bryce Harper is a Bryce Harper. And that's where it's really to keep in mind. Yes, we can talk about these scenarios about recruiting and about D1 or D2. The focus really needs to be not on any of this. It needs to be on the development. And that's what was preached to me when I was in high school. And I'm preaching kind of to you guys as well, because when we're talking about that player development, like you guys have seen in some of my videos, it's not just about going to the gym. Going to the gym is physical development, right? When we're thinking about skill work, hitting the ball, catching the ball, throwing the ball, basically the definition of baseball, that is skill development. We also have the mental development. We also have leadership development. We also have like diet and nutrition and hydration development to make sure that we're also fueling our bodies with supplements as well. That's something that I forgot that kind of falls into the category of the diet. The diet, yes, you can kind of mesh together with the physical as well, because technically the physical is the gym. The diet and the nutrition, it's kind of a byproduct of the gym. But these are the areas that we have all control of, right? What we're putting into our body, the work ethic, not necessarily we, right? But like I'm gonna say we because I'm the player, but really your son out there, making sure that he has the mindset of focusing on these things, because these things will turn him into a Harper or something maybe a little bit less, and that's okay. If he has those dreams and goals to shoot for the stars, that's okay, because at the end of the day, if he misses and lands on the clouds, that's still pretty high up there, right? So I'm going to wrap things up on that note, guys. Today was a great day. I'm not going to do a recap today because we've had so many recordings. Let me see actually how many we see. The reason I don't like doing the recording anymore is because I have to start on like that one. Okay, let's actually do one recording. Why not? Okay, we'll do a recap of what we covered today, and this is going to wrap things up for today's live. So, all right, recap of day 8 of 50, streaming every single day at 11 a.m. Eastern time, excluding Sundays. So the first thing that we really talked about was how in the recruiting game, there can be this straight line to your goal of getting a scholarship, but there's so much noise out there that you're kind of going up and down, and you're making all of these mistakes throughout this journey. And that's where ultimately we want to make sure that we have some level of a guidance. One area that we also talked about is tracking metrics as far as our email performance. Just the same way that we're tracking batting average, ERA, your height, weight. Why even track your age? It doesn't really matter, right? Who in the world would ever think that way? Well, guess what? If we're tracking our opens, our clicks, our responses in our emails, what gets measured gets improved. We also talked about the radical extreme of sending 100 emails, but guess what? If 99 of them bounce, it has nothing to do with the quality of player that your player is. What if we send 100 and 100 of those emails get opened, but nobody clicks on your emails? Again, with the understanding of how we actually need to track our emails and how they're getting clicked or opened or respond, that's going to be how we navigate the college recruiting process with data-driven decisions. We also talked about how D1 athletes will walk on and how much more difficult it will be. We also talked about, let's see what else we talked about. We talked about how the athletic department will help you get admitted into a specific university or a specific college program. We also talked about how college coaches will stay very, very diligent on their decisions on who they give scholarship money on, and then maybe this one guy, joins in, walks on, and basically is given some playing time. I also talked about basically stacking all of my odds in my favor because I wanted to make sure that I was putting myself in the best situation as possible. So I was shooting for the stars as far as D1, so that way I could only go through the college recruiting process once rather than going through it 3-4 times. Also, I think it's kind of funny how some parents will think about how the common question, should my son go to a D2 and for sure play or go to a D3 and not play? Guys, don't think about it black and white because your son could play at a D1 if he is at that skill caliber. And we also finally wrap things up with kind of just where our focus needs to be, again, with how D1 quality players aren't going to D1 anymore. No, in my opinion, D1 players are still going to be going D1 because they are D1 players, kind of like a Harper, right? And instead of focusing on the recruiting game being that much more competitive, what we really need to be focusing on the physical development, or really the player development, with the physical, with the skill, with the mental, with the leadership qualities, with the diet, nutrition, the supplements. These are the things that we have control of to be able to turn into that Bryce Harper one day who has the opportunity to play at the highest level D1 program or really choose his path. Hopefully you guys really enjoyed it. Today was awesome. I'll see you guys back tomorrow for another Coffee and Baseball. Take care.
Welcome Evan Mendoza to the program.
Cardinals third baseman Evan Mendoza.
Giving it a look, finds the railing and he tumbles over, but he made the catch. Unbelievable, Evan Mendoza.
Gran jugada en Evan Mendoza, dos joyas defensivas.
Evan Mendoza makes a great
rounded up the middle. Mendoza throws off the shortstop. Mendoza field spins, throws.
Mendoza throw to first in time. Wow, what a play by